after the Wesleyan revival came to America, it began to spread like wildfire. Pastors used Wesley's example and rode from place to place, preaching and pastoring. They were called circuit riders. They were what we call itinerant pastors, pastors who moved from one place to another place as needed. Actually, the Free Methodist Church today still uses that term as part of our tradition. Although Wesley was not happy about launching a new denomination, he finally agreed to it, knowing that it would help spread the gospel of Jesus and the transformation in holiness to the new land. So, at the urging of many in America, John Wesley agreed to it becoming more than a movement when he named Thomas Coke and Francis Asbury to be co-superintendents. And then he blessed the ordination of Francis Asbury by Coke in Baltimore in 1784. The Methodist Episcopal Church began. This loosed a wave of spiritual awakening across the new country, focusing on experiencing God's holiness through Jesus. But, like in any new movement, it began to wane. And just like other churches before it, it got a little too institutional and began to lose its focus on Christ, the Holy Spirit, and making a difference experientially in people's lives and in society. In the 1800s, many of the people in the Methodist Episcopal Church began to preach and write against growing secularism in the church. Many of the pastors then owned slaves. Many of them would meet in the Masonic Lodge and secretly make decisions. Renting seats was the way they received money for the church, and many churches began to take advantage of that by creating a discriminating system that left the poor out. They began to allow the centrality of Christ in the gospel to become watered down. Holiness as a central feature of the message became less important, and the church increasingly became irrelevant to the issues of culture around it. But some people worked hard to renew the emphasis of Wesley's passion and transformation. One of those was a woman by the name of Phoebe Palmer. I actually consider her the mother of the holiness movement. Early in the 19th century, she began to have Bible studies in New York City on Tuesday mornings. A lot of people came to those, including people who later went on to start important movements. One of those, for example, was Catherine Booth, who later influenced her husband, and the two of them began what we know today as the Salvation Army. Another person that Phoebe Palmer mentored was a lady by the name of Ellen Stowe. Ellen was a young woman who happened to be dating a young man who was studying religion in Connecticut. His name was Ben Roberts. Ellen was so influenced by Phoebe Palmer's teaching about full salvation and holiness that her enthusiasm began to affect her husband's life. And in their subsequent marriage and ministry in the Methodist Episcopal churches, Benjamin Roberts and Ellen Stowe Roberts acted as a team in building churches and seeing people come to the experience of salvation and devoting their lives fully to the pursuit of holiness. In the face of a lot of cultural matters like slavery, oppression of women, renting pews in prejudicial ways, secret societies, and manipulation, Benjamin and Ellen stood out. After a number of years and a few articles that Benjamin wrote, and a long process, he was ultimately expelled from the Methodist Episcopal Church. Can you imagine the dynamics and foment of that day? All of this taking place in Western New York. And it became known, actually, as the Burned Over District. Holiness was a powerful theme to the entire nation at a time when slavery was active, oppression of women, power in secret societies like the Lodge, discrimination of poor people, unfair labor laws, economic prejudice against farmers inland. Imagine those times. There are so many people who emerged as Christ-like and gentle witnesses to experiencing God's holiness as the cure. People like the Roberts family, along with many others, including Phoebe Palmer earlier, Richard Allen, Orange Scott, C.H. Mason, Amanda Smith, Alma White, just to name a few. They were so influential and impactful in fueling what we call the beginning of the holiness movement. And it continues today. A lot of the smaller branches budded during this period as the family tree expanded with many small branches in America. These holiness people were significantly responsible for big things like the Underground Railroad bringing slaves out of the South and into the North, helping women get the right to vote, abolishing slavery, changing economic laws to allow farmers to get their crops to the eastern coast, and even agricultural changes, all based on Christian principles. What a convergence of political and social and spiritual forces. I guess you can see now why it's very difficult to reduce our family lineage to a few simple statements. The first Free Methodist local church was started by John Wesley Redfield in St. Charles, Illinois. He was a co-founder with B.T. Roberts of the Free Methodist Church. The word free was originally used as an adjective. It was used as a descriptor in the efforts to reform the Methodist Episcopal Church. They wanted to have free churches that would emphasize freedom of slavery, freedom of the spirit, free pews, freedom for laity to lead, freedom from secret societies, freedom of the Holy Spirit to work, and freedom in worship. It was only with the institution of a denomination in 1860 that the word free became a formal part of the title. And the Free Methodist Church became a significant part of the holiness movement, which swept throughout the country and gave rise to a very important revival. That revival began in 1906, led by a black holiness pastor of Apostolic Faith Mission. His name was William Seymour. His deepest desire was to call people to racial reconciliation. It began in a small wood frame building on Azusa Street in Los Angeles. As the revival continued, it began to move more toward manifestations of the Spirit rather than racial reconciliation. By 1913, this revival had lost its momentum. Many people went back home, birthing what today we know as the Pentecostal revival. That Los Angeles revival was principally among black holiness people, Hispanic people, and poor white people. Because it became so visibly focused on the gifts of the Spirit instead of racial reconciliation, a lot of people, including myself, believe that William Seymour was brokenhearted. In fact, although this revival launched the holiness Pentecostal movement, it also created deep divisions between the black and white church and between the Pentecostal and revivalist parts of the holiness movement. I like to say that it divided the noisy ones from the quiet ones. The Free Methodist Church identifies with the revivalist arm of the holiness movement, even though there were Free Methodist groups called Pentecost bands in the Midwest. They traveled from place to place, seeing signs and wonders and starting churches like wildfire. But when they became so emotional that the leaders of the Free Methodist Church were not able to structure or control them, finally they left and the energy was lost. In a similar way, the Nazarene Church experienced great activities of Pentecostalism, but likewise they became afraid of that energy and actually changed their name from the Pentecostal Church of the Nazarene to the Nazarene Church. Throughout the 20th century, the Free Methodist Church continued an emphasis on holiness, but like many other denominations, including Pentecostal churches, we kind of got stuck a bit in the emphasis on rules and regulations that turned into heavy legalism. We began to flatline in growth, and together with most other holiness denominations, both black and white, we were strangely quiet in the civil rights era. Only in the last 20 years have we begun to rediscover the essence of holiness. We'll talk about that later in one of our future videos. Along with our sibling holiness denominations in both revivalist and Pentecostal arms, we are beginning to come back into unity and reweave the black and white and the revivalist and Pentecostal families, each with their own strength. It's a long lineage, and I certainly have not done it justice, but I hope you can see that there is so very much that has shaped our family. These are the currents and nuances that make us who we are. Many of these branches in our family tree are all part of the same effort that we all seek. Take some time with another assignment. Draw your own family tree for the Free Methodist Church. And then, secondly, when you're done, use that family tree to teach or to lead in your small group. Reflect and be thankful for the way God has nurtured the Free Methodist Church and brought us to where we are today with values and principles, influences and uniquenesses that have been shaped throughout centuries.